So I'd like to welcome Tracy Tresidder. Good morning from the UK, and I know you're out there in Sydney, Australia, so it's a little bit of a time difference. But thank you so much for joining us on the podcast, and really looking forward to our conversation around golf psychology and mental game performance. Tracy, would you mind just telling us a little bit about your background and what's led you to this point, and why you're so involved with golfers?
Yeah, certainly. And welcome from Sydney, Australia, in the evening for me. I have been golfing myself for about 20 years, and I also studied coaching psychology. And when I first started playing golf, I was applying my coaching psychology principles into my golf. And my golf got fairly good fairly fast. And not to a professional level by any means, but just purely an amateur, enjoying my local club and game, and I had people questioning me about how I got so good so fast, basically, and I was telling them about the techniques that I was using, and then I basically moved into speaking at golf clubs, and then writing a book, and then ultimately into doing some of my coaching with golfers who were really struggling with the mental aspects of their game. So it became really more of a passion for me. Most of my work is coaching within organisations, and my golf mind coaching is more of a passion because I really just love supporting golfers in being the best that they can be, and coming back to enjoying their game again, because I think by the time they get to me, they're completely spent. They've had lots of lessons, and the thing that's really getting in the way is their mind. So being able to work with them in that space and have them really enjoy their game again has been really joyful for me.
Yeah, that must be incredibly, as you say, incredibly rewarding. It's a really interesting route in, actually. Do you find much overlap between the stuff you do in the more corporate world with the techniques and strategies you're using in the sporting world?
Yes, there is a lot of overlap. I think the majority of it is really around this ability to notice your thinking. And so, we technically call it metacognition. So thinking about your thinking. And when people start to become more aware of what is going on in their mind from a thinking perspective, and how they can actually how their thoughts control how they feel, which then controls how they act or respond. It doesn't matter whether you're in standing in a room in front of a group of people doing a presentation, or whether you're standing on the first tee at the golf course with 20 people watching you tee off. Basically, you flip your lid, as we call it, and all these chemicals run through your body, and it creates this massive physiological response, but starts as a mental piece and then really becomes more so physiological that people just go into a state that they find difficult to control. So it's, from the boardroom to the golf course, or from the office to the golf course. It doesn't really matter. It's very, very similar.
The similarities. And I've read a bit about of your background and the articles you sent me, which were absolutely fascinating. And as I saw it, there was a lot of mindfulness involved. Is that something that's kind of always been there from the start, or is that something, because obviously it's become much more popular in the last 10, 15, 20 years. So is that something that's evolved with your practice, or was it kind of there from the start?
It was there from the start, but I think being introduced to ACT, acceptance commitment therapy, really cemented my understanding and my application of the mindfulness into the whole process. So it was there, but it's become much more prevalent, and really a much bigger part of the strategies and the techniques I support golfers with. And it's not, as I say to them, it's not about going and sitting on top of a mountain and chanting and doing meditation for 3 hours. It's really just noticing what's going on in your mind, and noticing those thoughts and not getting attached to them, and not being attached to them in a judgmental way, which is what most golfers do, is that they stand over the first tee and their mind is going, oh, don't hit it, don't duff the shot, you've got 20 people watching, make sure you hit it, and there's just this constant dialogue going on in their head that is really well supported by using an ACT principle or a mindfulness principle or strategy to reduce that.
So what might be a common strategy then? That's such a, I suppose anecdotally, that's such an issue for the common golfer, the everyday golfer, under pressure. You know, they've walked from the practice range where typically they feel pretty comfortable. They've got a nice basket of balls in front of them. There's not a lot of consequence. And then they walk to the first tee and all of a sudden they've got 20 guys and they know they're being, well, they sense that kind of judgment and they can feel the pressure. So what might be a common strategy that you might implement with someone to allow them to help their performance, help them focus on the task?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a staged process, because the first part is really around the awareness piece, is to notice what they're thinking and to notice their thoughts, and then to notice the reaction that has somatically on their body. So part of the process is helping them become more aware of how they're thinking, and notice that I use the term simply noticing. So noticing in a non-judgmental way that allows them to just go, oh, there's that thought again. You can hit it on the range, but man, you just cannot hit it on the course in the competition. Notice that thought, and then move into a place where they notice somatically what's going on in their body. And because usually your body sends you a message before your brain actually notices what's going on. So notice that, the heart fluttering, or the clammy hands, or the dryness of the mouth, or whatever. So the combination of those two, noticing somatically what's going on and noticing your thoughts, is really the first step. And if you don't notice those, you then have literally, as we describe it, flipped your lid, and you've gone into that full fight or flight, away kind of move, threat state. And so if they can notice that first, then they move into what I describe as a present moment experience. And that is, and there's a few strategies that I use. So it depends a bit on the golfer. So I really have a bag full of strategies, or, I've got a toolkit of things that I can use depending on the personality of the golfer and what their main issue is. But it's usually get into the present moment, and that might be using some counting breathing. So literally just pause for a moment before you walk onto the tee, breathe, and we call it 7-11 breathing. So breathe in for 7, pause, and breathe out for 11. And as you breathe in for 7 and out for 11, and you do a couple of cycles of that, you activate the vagal nerve, and the vagal nerve is the nerve that runs from your brain through your heart into your gut. So it's connected to all 3 centers, and it actually creates or it causes your body to start your parasympathetic nervous system, which is commonly known as your rest and digest nervous system. It's that relaxed state. Whereas when you walk onto the tee and you're thinking, oh, I'm worried, I'm fearful, I don't know what people are going to say, I can't, I've hit it on the range, but I can't hit it on the course. You've gone into that fight and flight state, which is your sympathetic nervous system. So that's your, preparedness for standing and fighting or running away, which is a terrible state to be in to hit a golf ball. So if we can use some counting breathing, that will help them get into that relaxed state to then be more softer with their hands, to be lower with their shoulders, to not be so tense over the ball. So that's one of the strategies, is the breathing.
We were really used to see, that was so noticeable with Tiger Woods a few years ago, where obviously in this day and age we get the privilege of being able to watch almost that whole driving range session before they go and play. And yes, he's improved a lot recently, and as I understand it, he's worked massively on his rhythm and lengthening his golf swing a bit. But certainly going back when his driving was pretty poor, you could see him on the driving range before going to play, and he had that rhythmical, quite long flowing motion, and he was just hitting drive after drive really well. And then you'd see him walk to the first tee, and it was just, massive pushes or hooks, and the rhythm had disappeared, and you could almost see that tension building up with him, and it was just that kind of, I just want to get this over with, get this one, and then try and get the round going. But it was always amazing. I mean, the commentators always made us kind of a mark of, when he gets to the first tee, a completely different golfer shows up. Now, I know he has kind of grown up he does have a bit of a mindfulness background with, his mum being a Buddhist, and obviously there's deep traditions of mindfulness within that. But obviously at that point in time, he wasn't using it particularly effectively. So you're saying the first step of that is just that pure awareness is so important to be able to just, rather than being kind of, if you're watching a movie and being completely immersed in the movie, that is, I'm going to hit a terrible first tee shot. Would you say it's a little bit like noticing that you're watching the movie rather than being completely immersed in the movie?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So it's that, I use that term, simply noticing. So simply noticing with your inner witness, not your inner critic. And it's that noticing your thinking. So thinking about your thinking. It's that metacognition piece. So yeah, it's watching yourself from the balcony, as we say. Because what happens is when you hit the dance floor of the first tee, the pressure is on, and your brain or your mind just runs away, and it's, if you don't notice that it's starting to go, then you do a complete lid flip, and then it's very hard to come back from. And not impossible, but quite often, we experience the golfers who might duff their first tee shot and then hook their next one and then scrub it along the ground and then 3-putt on the first hole, and and they're stomping and snorting. It's coming out their ears and their nose, and they're beside themselves with anger and frustration, and then they take that onto the second tee, and so on and so forth. And sometimes it takes them 3, 4, sometimes 5 or 6 holes, or even to the 9th, before they actually go, I'm kind of over it. I've had enough. And then they literally give up. And then all of a sudden their golf improves. And I go, well, there's no, there is a reason for that. Psychologically, we know why that is happening. So it's fairly classic. So ideally, I'm trying to get golfers to notice their thinking, become more aware, and not just on the golf course. I get them to practice this, when you're driving the car and you get triggered, when you come home from work and your partner has a go at you for leaving your clothes on the floor, or you have an argument with your children or whatever. There are opportunities everywhere for you to be able to notice your thinking, notice you flipping your lid, and then practice the bringing your lid back down piece. So yeah, it's available everywhere.
How does the ACT, the acceptance commitment training, or acceptance commitment coaching, as it's sometimes known in sport, how does that compare to other techniques? Because traditional psychology, certainly as I've experienced it, I've played history. I've had a couple of days in the sun. Those days are longer behind me now. But when I used to play to somewhat of an elite level, it was very much about, you have to be thinking a certain way. You have to be, kind of only positive thoughts, very much shoulders back, and really it kind of show a lot of confidence in your physical posture and everything else. And I always found that quite mentally draining to try, and always maybe felt a bit artificial in trying to create that internal environment within myself. And how would you say the ACT, or acceptance commitment coaching approach, has similarities or differences to that type of approach?
Yeah, so and not specifically to that approach, but the one approach that I'm probably more familiar with is CBT, so cognitive behaviour therapy. And keep in mind that I have studied coaching psychology. I'm not a psychologist, so coaching psychology is my background. And we do cognitive behaviour coaching as well as acceptance commitment coaching. And the main difference is what do you do with the thoughts? And so in cognitive behaviour coaching, the desire is to dispute the thoughts. The thought comes up and then you dispute it. Well, basically what happens is you end up having an argument in your head with your inner critic about, oh, surely you can do that. Well, no, I can't do that. Well, haven't done it for a while. And so you end up with this basically an argument going on with your committee of critics inside your head, and that just pushes you further into that threat state. So from that perspective, ACT is so much more useful, and the strategy works so much better than trying to dispute the thoughts. And so we're not even trying to ignore them or dispute them. So through acceptance commitment therapy, where there's an acceptance of those thoughts. So there's knowing that they're there, and then just literally thanking your mind for the thought, and then moving into the next part of the strategy. So it's very simple. It's not rocket science, and it works so well with. And I've just found in the last 3 or 4 years where I've been trained in ACT that my golfers are really having a great response and a great result as a result of that. And let me give you an example. I've got a guy I'm working with at the moment who classically had the hitting it beautifully at the range, but could not take it to the course. And the minute he got onto the course, he just did all sorts of very strange things. Anyway, we've had about 3 sessions, and he literally sent me a text on Saturday afternoon with like the oh my God emoji, and went, oh my God, I've just had 42 Stableford points. It's like, thank you. And, for me, that's just an absolute joy, because this guy has been struggling for months with his game and thinking that it was all technique, and realising now that, hey, you can hit it really well on the range, so what's the difference between the range and the course? And so once he got a handle on managing how he thinks and using some of the strategies, there we go. His game has improved enormously.
So do you feel that the kind of traditional CBT approach is a bit more hands-on in terms of, dealing with your thinking and dealing with, irrational thoughts, whereas ACT or mindfulness is a bit more hands-off, just kind of allowing it to, or it's just the assumption there is it's a bit more of a natural part and parcel of being slightly outside of your comfort zone?
Yes, I would agree with that. Because the CBT is holds on to that thought in that disputation of it. And, as we know, or as I've experienced with my golfers, the more they try and hold on to that thought to dispute it, the larger the issue becomes for them, and the worse their golf gets. So, and then there's the other instance where, I've had somebody say to me just recently, I'll just not think about it. And I go, well, if I say to you, don't think about a big white polar bear, what comes to mind? Your mind is, you literally picture a big white polar bear. So you can't not think about something. So we've got to do something else. It's like a bad habit. You can't just stop the bad habit. You need to replace it with a good habit or a better habit.
Yeah.
So the same with ACT in golf. It's really it's replacing the thinking, changing the thinking. But also it's very values-based, which is what I really like about it, because it's that, to me, it's that, what is it that you enjoy or love about golf? And I ask every golfer that I work with, very much in the first session, tell me all the things you love about golf, and what are the things that you value about golf when you're out there. And that's something that we come back to every time, without a doubt, because that's that being committed to that values piece, and or the strengths that they have while they're on the golf course is a really important focus for them, because some of them, need a bit of a reality check as far as they're amateurs. They're taking, well, most of them that I work with are amateurs. They're taking their golf so seriously that they're, as I say to them, well, thank God you don't have the house on it. You're not betting the house on the game. Basically, you're just out here having fun, and there might be a few bucks in skins, but ultimately speaking, you can walk off this golf course and it's not going to affect your livelihood.
Can you tell us a bit more about that values piece? Because I think certainly historically, my experience of that word has been, quite corporate and a bit, maybe a bit dirty. Maybe that's the wrong word, but I think you're talking about more personal values, which sounds a little bit different. Could you tell us about? And it does actually remind me of one of the great coaches in history, a chap called Fred Shoemaker. When he used to start working with a client, he would always actually ask them, rather than talking about the swing or what they wanted to achieve or so on and so forth, he would just ask them, why do you play? And he would just keep asking them and digging down and digging down. This is, I mean, we're talking, a long time ago, but intuitively, he got a sense that understanding and gaining that perspective as to what was, I think this is what you're talking about from the values piece, is what they were even doing there. Why had they turned up and paying him good money to help them get better?
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit more about the values and how, what are the ways that people that are listening can tap into understanding a bit more about that?
Yeah. So when we think about values, as you say, it can be corporatized and can be used as a weapon against people. We've got our values of respect and integrity and whatever else, and people can come out and say, well, you're not doing that and you're not being respectful. So for some people, values is a dirty word. So I don't usually use the word values. I just simply ask people, what is it that you love about golf? And then they might, many of them say, oh, I just love being in the outdoors, or I love the camaraderie that we have when I'm playing with my mates. And then I say to them, well, what's important about that to you? And then I use that as a repeating question. So they end up with a list of maybe 8-10 things that they really love about golf, and that is really important to them. And then as we unpack that even further, so what's important about being with your mates? It's the relationship, it's the fun, it's the camaraderie, it's the joy, it's whatever. And as you start to unpack that even further with that repeating question of why is that important to you, you really get to the core of really why are they going out there and doing that? And that kind of eases the pressure on, well, actually, there are so many things that I love about this game. And the fact that I may not be playing well today doesn't have to mean that, my life is over, basically. You can really just look at it as what is it that you love about it, and be grateful for the fact that you have the ability to go out there and play. Yeah.
So values is a little bit more kind of win, lose or draw. They've got a sense that as they're just engaging in the kind of the act of playing and competing and socializing and testing their skills or challenging themselves, then they could well be just living out the things that they really enjoy about the game.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and so
it's a very powerful stance. I can see that being that perspective taking of getting a sense of good shot, bad shot in different windows of draw. There's still this strong sense that they're doing something that's important to them.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's so important because and this is where often what I call the reality check or the clipboard coaching, where I pick up the clipboard and smack them over the head with it. Not that I do that, but I say to them, let's have a reality check here. I mean, I had a golfer say to me a couple of weeks ago, oh, he said, I played such bad golf today. He said, I think my life is over. And he goes, not really, but I'm so down, I'm so upset, and he even used the word depressed. And I said to him, do I need to call the therapist or do I need to call the mental helpline? And he goes, no. And I go, well, let's just have a reality check here. Let's remind you what is important about getting out there on the golf course to you. And it's not necessarily winning, because you can't win every time. And there's this saying of, it's about doing your best and not necessarily being the best. And you won't always be your best. And that's down to a whole range of things: circadian rhythms, temperature, food, sleep, health, wellness. There's a whole range of things that affect your golf. So let's take a reality check and just go, what is it that you really love about this game and why are you here?
Yeah, I just had that little kind of, it's a very precious time if you have that perspective, being out on the golf course and, as you said, being with friends and engaging in the competition. Do you think I just had a thought when you're talking about, really playing golf with values being one of the, at the forefront of engaging in, because at face value, why would you put yourself in front of 50 guys and hitting a shot, where you're not necessarily particularly competent, and you could be embarrassed, and you could be stressed, and why would we even do that in the first place? So that there must be something there that's of importance to us. So yeah, I love that piece. That's fantastic. Do you think Tiger Woods was, because when you were talking about the kind of, we can't win all the time, and maybe the dangers of getting too obsessed by winning, and that was always Tiger Woods' mentality, is kind of winning takes care of everything. And obviously he had that drummed in from childhood. Do you think he was always headed for some other issues? Because I suppose, as you said, you can't win every time, and if you're placing great emphasis on, I suppose, even self-worth, I have to win to prove myself.
Yeah,
that's going to end up being a bit of a train wreck eventually.
Oh, absolutely. And I see that not only on the golf course, I see that with all my other clients as well. So it's around the, there's a couple of questions is, what is your definition of success?
Okay.
And if your definition of success is always simply winning, then you're destined for disaster at some point, because you cannot win all the time. And we know that failure is actually really good, because it gives us lots of feedback. So, what's your mental state like if you're only ever focused on winning? And the other question that arises is, how do you know that you are of value if you're not achieving all the time? And so, as you said, that sense of self-worth becomes absolutely tied to achievement. And that's a really dangerous place to be, because you can't always achieve. You can't always, it's like having that constant to-do list of things to do. If you run out of your list of things to do, well, who am I? Who am I without the doing, so to speak? So it's a tension between achievement and a sense of being. And if there is too much focus on the achievement piece, that sense of being becomes lost, and the focus then goes, and they flip their lid just constantly because they're not achieving.
I've got a highly competitive 9-year-old cricketer who shed many tears on the cricket pitch when things aren't going his way. And I always try and remind him that, you play to win, you play your absolute best at any given moment. But it's not the only thing that's there. We also play for other reasons. Winning is a big part of it, and it's fun and it's great, but it's also that socialness, it's the connectedness to your teammates, it's the challenging yourself, it's the challenging of your skills and your competencies. And it's the being outdoors, and not always got the sunshine in this country, but, so
well, it's back to that values piece, isn't it? So what's important to you? And knowing, and this is where the reality check comes in, is that knowing that you cannot win every time, whether it be cricket or golf or tennis or whatever, but you go out and you do your best, and if you've done your best and you haven't won, well, that's the way the dice rolls sometimes.
What advice would you give? I coach quite a few junior golfers who are really enjoying themselves, and they're quite up and coming, and they're really developing their skills quickly, and they're starting to play in competitions. What advice would you give to myself or their parents to kind of nurture them in a healthy way?
That's a really good question. I have, the ugly parent on the sideline has just been a complete nightmare for a long time. And I do, I've actually, I've had to have a fairly serious word to a couple of parents about their junior golfer kids, because, they wonder why they get to a point after 3 or 4 years and they just give it away. Why? Because it's the parent's goal. It's not the child's goal. So one of the first things is why is this child doing it? Is this their goal? Do they want to get better? Do they want to play the game? What are they doing it for? What's important to them about doing it? And is the parent trying to make another little Rory McIlroy or Jordan Spieth or whoever? Are they trying to develop and mould a superstar sports person? Or are they just developing a child who's going to have a love of a game that we know is great to learn at a young age? So, some of the coaching I do is parent coaching, and it's around helping parents develop great relationships with their teenagers generally. And parents often say to me, can you just come and coach my kid because they're the one who needs fixing? And I say to the parents, no. I won't work with the child unless I work with you first. So generally the work with junior golfers needs to be with the parent first, around having the parent be more relaxed around the child's development in that space, because there's a whole range of developmental things that are going on, cognitive, psychosocial, physical development that are occurring for that child that the parent probably has no idea about. And that affects their ability to perform at their best. And that, as we all do, we have up days and down days, and there are some days where the kids just can't be bothered and don't want to, and parents get very insistent and very pushy, and they literally turn their children away. And then a power struggle develops between the child and the parent, or sometimes, which is horrible, I've seen parents shaming their children, which is just awful. It's a horrible place for a child to be, shamed by their parent in front of other people. That is just awful. So the thing I say to the parents is, relax, just pull back a little bit, check in with your child. What do they want? Support them in being their best, and use some of the mental techniques with yourself and then with your child.
So that piece of ACT really sits on psychological flexibility, that model of I've heard Stephen Hayes, the founder of ACT, talk about if you want to nurture psychological flexibility within your children, then start with yourself.
Yes.
And they'll copy it. I might actually make that a prerequisite from now on of working with kids, because I've got more and more kind of parents coming to me, and I think they've seen the successes of other kids that I've coached. So I'm getting more and more parents coming to me saying, can you work with the child? But I might include that as a prerequisite. It's kind of like, fine, but let me kind of see that we're on the same page first.
Yeah, exactly. Let me connect with what it is you really want for your child. And so, one of the sayings I have in coaching is, parent coaching, is that this is not about doing it to your child. This is about doing it with your child.
Yeah.
And so what we're wanting them to do is to learn some awareness and tools and techniques, and that psychological flexibility, the perspective-taking capacity to be able to view their goals through their child's eyes rather than through their own eyes, because they're only seeing it with the lens of their own eyes. And as I say to all the parents I work with, there's no doubt that you love your child and you want the best for your child and you're wanting them to be the best they can be. There's no doubt about that. But the actual practical application of that desire or that goal often gets lost and becomes very ugly in the pursuit of excellence. Yeah, it's a tough situation, no doubt.
Yeah. Well, some of the things you mentioned, my mind was casting back to the school run this morning. So
yes,
I could definitely get that sense of that tug of war, that mental tug of war. But funny enough, I did actually used a mindfulness technique and brought myself back into the present moment, which allowed me to think about, right, we need to get to school. What's the best way the tug of war isn't working.
Yeah, exactly.
What's the best?
Yeah. And interesting, I'm just talking about the kids too. So with my, because I've got my Golf Mind to Play book, And what I'm just starting to partner now with an artist who we're going to do a cartoon version for kids. So it'll be golf mind play for children, basically, in a cartoon kind of book, which then means, and hopefully the parents will read that as well, which then helps the parents understand how to use the principles of ACT with their child through their golf, but also not just in golf, but in life in general. So hopefully,
can you tell us? We can see the book here on the screen. Can you tell us a little bit more about the book and when it came out and what inspired you to write it?
Yeah, I first published it in 2007. So there we go, quite a while ago now.
Wow, yeah.
And then I republished it in 2013, I think, after I wrote an extra chapter and made a few changes based on my ACT training. So I really brought more of an ACT acceptance commitment therapy focus to it, and more mindfulness focus. And the book basically came about through my love of golf in the early days, and as I was describing how I was getting fairly good fairly fast at golf, and my friends asking me how was I doing that, and then I was providing them with some coaching as we were playing, and then a few people said, can you speak at a golf club? And I said certainly. And then after speaking at a few golf clubs, somebody said to me, have you got a book? And I went, no, I don't actually, but I'm sure I can write one.
Yeah.
And basically that's how the book came about. So it's an easy read. It's, you can sit down and read it cover to cover in about an hour. It's quite simple.
Oh, wow.
But the good news, and as I say to people, it's how you apply it is the really important thing. So, don't get the book and read it cover to cover and then go out and play the next day, because you basically then negate all the principles that are in the book of one, it's almost like the Harvey Penick saying, one thought, one swing, or one swing, one thought. So I say to people, read it completely a few days before you play golf, and then literally the night before you go to bed, have it sitting on your bedside table, and then just randomly open the book at any point. And then read that small section. And that small section might only be 300 or 400 words, not very long, a page and a bit. And then think about, as you close the book, how do you apply that into your golf tomorrow? And then when you go out to play your golf tomorrow, just have that one concept as your key thought for the day. And every time something starts to go south, come back to that one thought, that one concept, and how am I applying that? So for people that I'm not necessarily working with, coaching one-on-one, that's a really easy way to get the best out of the book. And then literally before you play next time, randomly open it again to another chapter. Just read a section. Don't even read the whole chapter, just read a section. Apply that thought the next day. And, people get quite good success just from doing that.
Yeah. So quite playfully exploring those new mental skills.
Yeah.
Wonderful. I'll include the link in the show notes for the book. And it's been a really interesting conversation this morning. So thank you so much for sharing your time and your knowledge with us. I'm sure people will find it really helpful, as I have. Thank you again, and all the best with your clients.
Yeah, thank you, Trevor. It's been an absolute pleasure. And anytime I can help support golfers in enjoying their golf more, which usually results then in playing better golf, is a great joy for me. So thank you for having me.